Bahamas, starting from my immediate left, we have Ms. Sandiria Hall, who is the Economic and Commercial Specialist at the U.S. Embassy based in Nassau, Bahamas. We also have Senator Barry Griffin. He is the Deputy Chair of the Bahamas Trade Commission. He's also a practicing attorney in the area of wealth management and corporate law. And last but not least, certainly we have John Rolls, the Governor of our Central Bank of the Bahamas. I'd like to give each of them just a moment to give a proper or more fulsome introduction of themselves before we dive into our panel, starting with Mrs. Hall. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Again, I'm Sandiria Hall. I'm the Economic Specialist at the U.S. Embassy based in Nassau. I'm a part of the political and economic section, particularly the economic and commercial portfolio. We have a small but vibrant team there in Nassau working to link the Bahamas and the U.S. in particular. Now, we know that a lot of the business and commercial engagement that goes on, it just happens naturally because the U.S. has always been the Bahamas' traditional partner in all of the sectors that were raised earlier today. But we are there to promote the bilateral economic and commercial relationship, to facilitate trade and investment, and also to assist with the Bahamas' efforts to maintain an enabling business environment and to work on all of the ease of doing business efforts. So on the U.S. side, in particular, we assist U.S. companies who are interested in doing business in the Bahamas. That, in essence, allows us to help them understand and comply with the local legal and regulatory environment, to understand the business and investment opportunities, whether there are RFPs that are put out there or business-to-business engagement, and also to connect directly with local Bahamian businesses. On the Bahamas side, we work with the government and private sector stakeholders to take advantage of opportunities on the U.S. side, and again, to help them have a voice when it comes to ease of doing business initiatives. So we work a lot with SME startups. We have a vibrant program. For example, you may have heard of the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs. There's training for small businesses, and we just help to promote. The Bahamas really has focused on economic diversification over the last few years, and so we help to promote direct linkages in that part. More on the economic side of things, we also help with fiscal transparency and compliance initiatives, and overall just maintaining an enabling environment, business environment.
All right, thank you, Senator Griffin.
Good morning, everyone. I hope that everyone still has a bit of energy for us before we have some lunch. So I think we'll try to keep it brief and perhaps a little bit exciting. But this morning I wear a number of hats. I'm Vice President of the Senate in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, so here as a legislator. Also Deputy Chairman of the Bahamas Trade Commission. The Bahamas Trade Commission is the body that's responsible for trade policy in the Bahamas, dealing with export trade, import trade, diversification of trade, and our trading relationships, whether bilateral or multilateral. We focus on the trade of goods and services in and out of the Bahamas, but as there are substantive ministries dealing with tourism and financial services, we tend to leave those areas alone and focus on trade largely in every other sector. I'm also a member of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, which is the body that now sits in the Office of the Prime Minister, responsible for beefing up the entire trade ecosystem in the Bahamas. So that's everything from customs to competition policy to the physical trading infrastructure in the Bahamas of our docks, such as Portis Key Dock. So I'm also a member of that body, and as Brian indicated, I'm an attorney at law specializing in private wealth management and corporate law. I'm happy to be here on the panel this morning.
Thank you, Governor Rowe.
Thank you very much. Let me congratulate the Embassy in Washington and the partners in the Ministry of Tourism and others for organizing what I think is a very, very important session. And I believe, just on the basis of what we have to discuss, that we're not going to do this justice. And the only way you're going to be able to sustain this is each of these panelists, all who come, we're going to have to see how this evolves into podcasts and other interactions where you can sit down and detail with these policymakers and draw out what's happening. But just to speak about what the Central Bank of the Bahamas does. Yes, we're responsible on a daily basis for the currency, issuing the currency, and managing the supply of currency, which now has a digital component. We carry the responsibility for our payment system. Payments really are the lubricant for how everything else functions in the economy. We're also responsible for the regulation of the providers of financial services. There are some other regulators in that space that covers banks, credit unions, and I like to term them now as money services businesses, which is give a hint in terms of how we're evolving, but that includes the money transmission businesses and the payment service providers who are relatively new in terms of their space. And then the other area where I think looks a lot very traditional in terms of the economic side of the textbook presentation is the bank's role from a monetary policy point of view, where it's summarized in terms of how we maintain the stability of our currency relationships, and that goes very deep. And we don't say it, and you may not realize it in here, and I'm only recently starting to formulate it, but the Bahamas is one of the most successful inflation targeting countries in the world. And I say that because we conveniently have an arrangement where we just copy and paste the experience of the United States, and we're only able to do that for as long as we be able to do so by having the stability of the currency peg. And that is something that is acknowledged continuously. If you were, even while you're here, able to find any of the IMF reports where they talk about the Bahamian economy, I don't want you to undervalue a commentary that is consistently in there around how the Bahamas benefits from the stable currency relationship. And I can assure you that a lot goes into that behind the scenes. Some of it, which does not always make the central bank out to be the good guy in the mix, but that comes with the territory. But at a high level, that's how I would define our role.
Thank you.